Hello and welcome to your in-depth weekly horoscope for week commencing the 21st of November. I'm going to outline what we can collectively expect this week, but please stay with me. I will then dive deep to give you in forensic detail each of the signs from Aries through to Pisces, which you can watch from the perspective of your sun or your ascendant if they are different. Now, as this week begins, Mars and Pluto end a really difficult, tense relationship which began on the 11th of October. This may not be particularly perceptible, but of course Mars is in the sign of Gemini, which is very much about strident opinions. It's in retrograde now, and it is being drained by the very dreamy, drifting and watery vibe of Neptune, and that does continue all this week. But Mars and Pluto are the two rulers of Scorpio, so there's been a huge amount of intensity washing around our situations. And the great news is that as we come into this week, on Tuesday, the Sun arrives in the sign of Sagittarius, where it joins up with Venus and Mercury that relocated last week. So it really is a case of a Sagittarius season. But of course, the sign of Sagittarius is very much about expansion, optimism, positivity, travel, higher education. It can be to do with international boundaries. And we do have a new moon which occurs on Wednesday. And this new moon is going to be squaring up the ruler of the sign of Sagittarius, Jupiter, which is in the other sign it governs of Pisces, but has been in a retrograde. Now that goes direct later on the day of the new moon, which is something to really celebrate. So through to the 20th of December, Jupiter is going to be making its way through the sign of Pisces, and then it moves back into the sign of Aries. If you would like to check out this Jupiter transition, please look out for my special deep dive video, which you can see in the links beneath this video. But this energy, this exuberance that Jupiter brings through its rulership of Sagittarius and Pisces, but because Jupiter is in a right angle, despite it coming to the end of its retrograde, does mean I feel that because the Sun, Mercury and Venus are in house 9 for us all, that's very much about the amplification of energy, whereas Jupiter is in house 12, very sensitive, very psychological, very much more to do with the hidden sphere. So I feel that whatever we're feeling, good or bad, it's going to feel that much more intense. But generally, I think there's going to be a much lighter and more vibrant vibe doing the rounds, which is really great. Also, Jupiter is going to be forging an extremely helpful angle with Pluto. This sextile goes through the whole of this week. And if we really want to be productive in terms of being more on the front foot, as long as we're listening to how things feel, because of Jupiter being very close to Neptune, the two rulers of the sign of Pisces, very much about that more spiritual, emotional dimension. As long as we tune into how things feel, we can use Jupiter's positivity with the productivity that Pluto brings around an appetite for change and transformation. So something can shape up in a very big and dynamic way this week. It could be that we're going to see some better news about international affairs. Let's all hope so. It's also possible that if for whatever reason in your particular locality COVID restrictions have meant mixing and mingling or moving around freely have been rather limited, I think things can free up somewhat more over the following month. And in general, this is a great opportunity to celebrate different ways of looking at life, downloading more information, becoming much more invested in facts and truth, because Jupiter at its best through its rulership of Sagittarius, is very much about that. Now, if you would like to ascend above this zodiac broadcast and understand what year 2023 will hold for you, please see the link beneath this video where you can order your personal forecast based on your time, date and place of birth. No two forecasts are the same. They're all absolutely individual to the data that they're prepared upon. If you order it now, you get the last part of 2022 free, and also my special package. You can also get your life roadmap or your character analysis, which will help you to understand some of the patterns that have been repeated in your life, but also help you to understand how to seize upon your talents and qualities in a much more successful way. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for joining me. If you would care to subscribe, please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. If you're already an ongoing viewer, thank you so much for all your views. So Virgo, your week commencing the 21st of November forecast sees the Sun playing catch up with your ruler Mercury, which moved last week into the sign of Sagittarius along with Venus. So the fourth house for you is very much about home, nurture, our defense, our protectiveness, but also any strand to do with security. So you could find yourself thinking very much about family life, perhaps adding to your family, changing your residency in some ways. Perhaps you're thinking about having guests for the festive period, and this week can give you an opportunity to think about how you can modify your accommodation to deal with that. Just generally, you could find yourself wanting not necessarily to retreat, but just be a bit more protective. So you've been through a part of the year which has been very intense in terms of communications, thinking. The nervous system has really been on edge with that very intense lunar eclipse, and of course before that we had the solar eclipse, and all of this has been emphasizing the third and ninth houses, very much to do with our ideas, the exchange of opinions, travel. Now it's time to just take stock a little bit, to have a little bit of a breather and just review things, and that could see you wanting to spend some time in nature, just be a bit more reflective and just recharge a little bit. Once the Sun moves with the winter solstice into the sign of Capricorn, you're going to have an awesome opportunity to be more playful and sociable, just in the nick of time for Christmas. But this period just gives you an opportunity to take stock. Now, Jupiter, the planet of fortune, but also of expansion, but also spirituality, that ends a retrograde in your sector of relating. I think some professional relationships have been a bit unclear of late, and perhaps there's been some politics. Perhaps you don't feel you've been getting the recognition that your talents fully deserve, or perhaps it's been more in a closer relationship where maybe not in a particularly out there way, but perhaps a little bit of a struggle for who gets the upper hand, not because somebody necessarily wants to dominate the other party, but just more your desire to have your voice heard. It's definitely been increased since August the 20th with Mars in your 10th house, but because it's in retrograde, been clashing and continues to do so with Neptune, that's quite a tricky right angle. So Jupiter going direct in your sector of relating is something to savour, but it does square up with the new moon. So I think when it comes to family situations, if you are discussing the arrangements for Christmas, for example, I think it's probably best not to put yourself in a situation of taking on too much. This is a time to really give yourself an opportunity to have a breath and just contemplate really a lot of things that are important to how you feel. So if you embrace the more feeling side of your nature, I think that's going to be the best way to make the most of this week's planetary energies.